All right, day 4 is officially in the books, and it's more explosive than anything. We're already into the medical examinations and all that type of stuff. Now we about to get into that other secondary crime, talking to that little girl like that. So we're going to get into some of that today. So make sure that you keep it locked in with me, Unico Williams. Do you hear me with Unico Williams? Right here is the channel on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know how you feel about everything. Okay, so let's get into it. So day 4, the prosecutors continue laying out evidence, as I alluded to earlier, basically allegedly connecting the singer to the grisly homicide of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. So last time we talked about cell phones and connected that with the Tesla and all that type of stuff. Now we're about to get into it a little bit more. So we left off yesterday with a medical examiner, and back to it. So Detective Farrell laid out the alleged relationship or grooming of the teen, confirming she had an abortion in January of 2024. Celeste would have been 13. David would have been 18. Attorney Patrick Steinfeld, who represents the Rivas Hernandez family, was present, though members of the family were not present in the courtroom. Before testimony resumed, defense attorney Blair Beck sat beside David, at times placing an arm around him, rubbing his back, handing him in a notebook and a styrofoam cup of water as the two quietly chatted. David, who appeared more conversational with his attorneys than on the previous days, greeted the judge with a brief "Morning, Your Honor," before proceedings got underway. So let's get to it. So basically, most of the most graphic and technical testimony happened on Friday morning, day 4, as Deputy Medical Examiner Dr. Grant Hu described the extensive injuries to 14-year-old Celeste. Testified that Celeste's body was so badly decomposed that the odor could be detected from the hallway outside the autopsy room. Because of the condition of the remains, he said it was impossible to determine the exact time of death. The best I can say is at least weeks, explaining that numerous factors, including environmental conditions, how the body was stored, weather, scavenger activity, and natural decomposition, made a more precise estimate impossible. When prosecutor Beth Silverman asked whether the condition of the remains was consistent with Celeste having died as early as April 24th, he could say potentially. April 24th is when they're trying to pinpoint that she was murdered that day. Ho told the court he supervised the autopsy alongside trainee, Dr. Ansel Nam. The pair verbally discussed their observations while notes were recorded on coroner diagrams and photographs documenting the examination were taken throughout the autopsy. According to Ho, the body was trauma consistent with dismemberment and markedly decomposed. He testified there was one dismemberment site on each arm and multiple cut sites on the legs. The cuts extended through bone, not just soft tissue, and the exposed surface cut surfaces appeared smooth. Ho also noted the previously mentioned tiny blue fragments embedded within several of the cut surfaces. The fragments were too small for him to identify, so they were collected and turned over to the criminalist for further examination. To help explain, Silverman asked Ho what medical examiners use to cut through bone during an autopsy. He testified that scalpels and knives are used for soft tissue and organs, but the power tools such as a circular bone saw are required to cut through bone because of its density. Using autopsy diagrams, Ho testified each leg showed two dismemberment sites, one around the upper thigh and another below the knee. Although the diagrams were not drawn to scale, he noted the cuts occurred at different heights on each leg. Silverman then asked whether that pattern was consistent with someone dismembering one leg at a time rather than making one straight cut across both legs. Said potentially. Asked whether the injuries appeared consistent with the use of a power saw, Ho again answered potentially. When Silverman specifically referenced a power cutting tool such as a chainsaw, Ho again responded potentially. However, Ho cautioned that he could not determine whether the dismemberment occurred before or after death. And here is basically what they drew up. So that's what they drew up essentially. Where some of the stuff y'all can go back and look at this all y'all want to later. But so Ho also testified that in addition to the amputated arm, Celeste's left ring finger and left pinky finger have been amputated. So those cuts also displayed clean, smooth surfaces and were consistent with a sharp instrument, such as a knife or a saw. The court was then shown a series of graphic photographs recovered from the Hollywood tow yard, including Celeste's right finger, index finger, and the amputated fingers from her left hand. Ho identified tattoo on the inside of the right index finger and described skin slippage, brown fluid, and clean cut surfaces consistent with advanced decomposition. Audible gasps could be heard from the members of the gallery as the images appeared on the courtroom monitors. Sad thing to have to watch, man. Throughout the testimony, Burke remained expressionless. David, once again staring at the graphic exhibits without any visible emotional reaction. Silverman next displayed a gruesome full-body autopsy photograph showing Celeste lying on a metal examination table, though it by no means resembled a beautiful teenager. Ho described extensive decomposition, skin discoloration, multiple dismemberment sites, and significant skin slippage. He testified portions of the face had undergone partial skeletonization. The left eye was absent. Soft tissue had liquefied, and insect activity, including small larvae, were present. Some short black curly hair remained on the scalp. He also explained that decomposition causes organs to soften, lose weight, and change color over time. This could help explain Celeste's weight of 71 pounds at the time of her September 10th, 2025 autopsy. Additional photographs focused on Celeste's decomposing torso after having been removed from the Tesla where investigators allege it was discovered. Ho pointed out injuries to the abdomen and left chest before describing a penetrating wound that traveled through the skin, diaphragm, and liver. He testified that the liver wound was consistent with a sharp force injury such as a stabbing. Although he measured the wound at approximately 1.5 inches deep, he explained decomposition caused the liver to shrink and soften, meaning the wound could have actually been deeper. He said the wound traveled from the front to back, consistent with someone being stabbed in the abdomen. Like maybe he was giving her like a one last hug, and maybe. Photographs of the open chest cavity in the liver after have been removed on autopsy were then displayed. Ho identified the wound track through the liver injury to the diaphragm. Other photographs show injuries. Okay, we know how she died, so we cool off of that. So anyway, he ultimately ruled Celeste's death a homicide, testifying that the manner of death reflected a public health classification for a death caused by another person. He identified the cause of death as multiple penetrating injuries, explaining that his conclusion was based not only on the wounds themselves, but also the overall circumstances of the case, including the dismemberment and concealment of the body. Ho also testified the routine toxicology testing was performed using liver tissue because the advanced decomposition of the remains left no blood to analyze. He said testing detected only a trace amount of ethanol that was just above the lab's threshold for detection, which he said could also be because of postmortem decomposition over alcohol consumption. Toxicology also detected benzodiazepine, while testing for methamphetamine was inconclusive. Ho testified that none of the toxicology findings contributed to Celeste's death, and then the results did not support an overdose. During cross-examination, defense attorney questioned Ho extensively about the limitations created by the condition of the remains and the degree of certainty behind several of his conclusions. Ho testified he finalized the autopsy report roughly 3 months after examination because he waited for toxicology and other ancillary testing before ruling out alternative causes of death. He also acknowledged that decomposition could potentially affect both anatomical findings and toxicology reports. Now, amid the previous sealing of the autopsy, along with the statement from the examiner's office amid the sealing, speculation arose about a possible rift between LAPD medical examiner and the DA office. Said there was no, but he said there was no there was no proof of that. He didn't see any evidence that that might be the case, but that there's beef between the DA and the medical. LA be fucking up, man. I'm telling you, LAPD, they be fucking up, cuz. So then David's defense questioning also appeared aimed at the possibility that the medical evidence alone could not rule out alternative scenarios, including whether Celeste may have inflicted the fatal wounds to herself. Holt testified he did not interview Celeste's family about her personal history and agreed that background information, including whether she had been suicidal, violent, or used drugs, can potentially be helpful in depth investigations. This appeared to be the defense exploring potential defense strategy, which garners some looks in the gallery. So, like, maybe it's a self-defense thing. We don't, not self-defense, but defending David like she did it to herself, and he just didn't know what to do, so he got rid of her. However, Ho maintained there were some limitations to what the autopsy could establish. He testified he could not determine the exact timing of the wounds. He also said he could not determine whether Celeste was holding an object that caused the wounds, though he explained medical examiners often look for hesitation marks or superficial injuries and suspected self-inflicted sharp force deaths, but there weren't any. He ultimately agreed he could not determine the precise circumstances under the wounds were inflicted. The defense also focused on the effects of advanced decomposition, which Ho testified prevented him from determining whether there had been evidence of a struggle before the death. The defense also revisited his testimony regarding penetrating injuries, and he testified injuries to the chest and liver were life-threatening and could have caused fatal internal bleeding. He acknowledged there was no physical evidence remaining that would allow him to identify whether blood exited the body externally or internally because of the remains. They talked about damage to her ribs. And then finally, he asked about questions depicting Celeste's severed fingers and whether he had personal knowledge of how the remains and evidence were packaged before reaching their office. He testified some skin defects lacked corresponding injuries to the underlying bone, making it impossible to determine whether these injuries occurred before death or changes occurred because of decomposition. So, however, another injury photo showed that he described as trauma-induced chipping of the rib bone associated with penetrating chest wound extending at least 2 inches into the chest cavity. They talked more about it. Silverman then asked a hypothetical question. If a victim had been placed inside a blue inflatable pool after being killed to contain blood while the body was dismembered with a chainsaw, would that be consistent with the embedded blue fragments found in some of her extremities? They objected real quick, arguing the question lacked foundation and was speculative because Ho had already testified he did not know the source of the fragments. He answered possibly. So he overruled the objection. And he said possibly again. So Ho further testified that both the chest wound and liver injury were independently life-threatening. He explained the chest injury could have impaired breathing by allowing air into the chest cavity or by damaging the lung, while the liver injury could have caused catastrophic internal bleeding. Prosecutors also revisited the orthodontic hardware, the braces, noted during. So, like, Ho clarified that he observed wire bonded to the back of Celeste's upper and lower teeth, which he referred to as braces, but stated he is not a dentist and could not detail any further. So he said it was a homicide. He just really couldn't come up with a concealment of the body and the lack of any other reasonable explanation for her death. He also testified that the routine toxicology testing was performed using liver tissue because of the advanced decomposition. So that's a lot. Basically, it was just a whole bunch of like explaining what they found. So next, they called up LAPD detective Farrell, who picked up his iPhone and iCloud accounts, went through all that stuff because they found his stuff at his house, along with a driver's license and passport, selfies, fake North Carolina ID, banking information, stuff like that. So that's why it's like this is his stuff. So Farrell also walked the court through dozens of photographs documenting what prosecutors alleged was Burke's relationship with 14-year-old Celeste. The images included photographs of Burke holding what appeared to be a ring, Celeste with dyed red hair, the pair kissing in bed and FaceTiming one another. Prosecutors also introduced photographs showing a female hand with red cursive writing, reading David, wearing what appeared to be the same ring Burke was pictured holding. Farrell further testified that Burke's phone contained a lock screen image of the two embracing while topless, though the image was not displayed in court. The detective testified the investigators also recovered sexually explicit photographs and videos from his phone that prosecutors alleged documented a sexual relationship between David and Celeste. Farrell said the material appeared to have been recorded inside David's bedroom and included nude images and videos of both individuals engaged in sexual acts, as well as close-up images of their genitalia. That's the part. It's sad it came to that, but it all started from something very, very bad. So there's evidence of that. So it's evidence of that. The images themselves weren't shown in the courtroom, but he did describe the contents after testifying. They were reviewed and filtered by their cybercrimes division for discovery purposes. He testified Celeste was frequently unidentifiable in the images by her distinctive dyed red hair. During a testimony describing the sexually explicit material, Celeste's parents quietly left the courtroom after becoming visibly overwhelmed. Her mother started crying and prompting the prosecutor to tell the family, I'm sorry, as they walked out. So, sorry now, huh? Farrell had recovered text messages and conversations between David and Celeste from his iCloud account. According to him, the earliest recovered communication was dated August 8, 2022, when Celeste was 11 years old, and the final recovered message was April 23rd, 2025. Remember, I think it was 29th, right? Or was it 24th? I can't remember. He testified the messages echoed the photographs and allegedly documented discussions about the pair's sexual relationship, plans to meet, travel between Lake Elsinore and David's Hollywood Hills home, their future together, pregnancy concerns, abortions, and emergency contraception. According to the detective, the pair referred to a plan called Operation Awesome, or OA, in text messages, which prosecutors said referred to a plan for Celeste to run away from home and live with David. Farrell also testified investigators confirmed David had booked a trip for the two to the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, which he had also learned from previous testimony. So the detective also testified investigators recovered photos of Plan B emergency contraception from David's iCloud account, which prosecutors linked to the text message conversations. Messages from late 2023 discussed pregnancy concerns, including David encouraging Celeste to track her menstrual cycle, and conversations in which she indicated she could not continue a pregnancy. He testified investigators confirmed at least one abortion took place in January 2024. Sounding real open and shut. At least there is evidence that he was dealing with an underage person. So as the afternoon went on, graphic text messages were read between David and Celeste dating back to when she was 13. There were conversations about sex, pregnancies, and also a thread that indicated that David's mother was aware of their sexual relationship. Again, new photos or CSAM are sent between the two, showing sexual activity or sexual relationship. Again, this is bad. The two appeared to break up in March 2024 when Celeste text, "All we do is hang out and have sex. I want more than that, man." So that's where, when day 4 here is, Celeste was pregnant at some point. There's text messages between them that's evidence that they had a sexual relationship, and it dates back to when I guess they first started talking, and when she was 11. But I mean, there was a pregnancy, there was an abortion, at least one abortion. Maybe his mom knew about it. Maybe his team and the people around him knew about it. We know his parents knew about it. I mean, her parents knew about it, and they was letting this stuff happen to this little girl, and it ends up in this big of even bigger tragedy. Sad, really. But listen, I'm your boy Nico Williams. That's day 4 of the hearing, preliminary hearing. So make sure you like and subscribe. Nico Williams, comment, do all those things. We'll be back for day 5 and the conclusion of the preliminary hearing. Is he going to trial? I think we know the answer to that. I holla. Thanks for watching. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. Don't forget, every Thursday, the full podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and mama, I'm on Spotify. Overall 99 ENT bring you videos from Friday all the way to Friday. So be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Again, thank you so much.